We're out here. We're gonna take our first shots using the Revic BR4 for drop validation, just to make sure they're gonna work for the rifles. These guns are shooting under half minute. Should be right on if I can shoot today. But we got some targets down there at 800 yards to start with. 800, 14.6 MOA up. Jeff, you ready?
Yep, I'm on it. Okay, we're ready. Zero wind. I see zero wind.
Zero wind. Ryan here with longrangeonly.com. In this video, we're going to talk about the Revic BR4. I'm going to go over the features. I'm going to talk about the things I like, the things I don't like, and then we'll wrap up the video. I'm not going to talk about the how-tos. Aaron has a bunch of great videos on how to set up, how to walk through the menus, and all that stuff. So if you're going to buy one or you're new to it, go check those videos out. I may do my own later, but right now we're just getting into the review section of this. I am going to talk about other rangefinders for comparison's sake, and then we'll let you know why I think this is the best thing that you can buy right now when it comes to a rangefinder for the long-range hunter or long-range shooter maybe, but more geared towards hunting. So I will say that this is a 10 power rangefinder. A lot of the other ones are in the 7 to 8, maybe even some 6 powers. This is a nice feature of it. I definitely wouldn't choose it based on this, but I think that when we talk about some of these pieces, it might add up to something that's more important to you than it is to me, and may make the rangefinder as a whole better experience for you. But it is a 10 power. I do appreciate that when you're trying to make sure you're getting on the right animal, especially some of the smaller animal like the pronghorn, or when you go to Africa, things like the springbuck or impala, and you're at long distance and you're trying to make sure that you're hitting the right animal in a big herd of animals. The 10 power does make it easier to figure out which one you're after. It is definitely noticeable when you're comparing to something like the SIG products that are 7 powers. The glass is also far superior to the SIG products. The SIGs have a little bit of a bluish tint, and the optical quality and clarity is just not on par with the Revic. The Revic actually destroys them. It's not even a comparison, really. It's a lot of top tier glass. It takes a lot of time behind it and looking at different objects or even optics charts to see the difference. This is very clear the second you hold them up. I do like that it has a cover. I know that it annoys some people, but this is an expensive optic, and the optics are important, as is the glass around the rangefinder, the range laser itself. So I do appreciate that. I'm not going to lie that sometimes when you're trying to get on an animal quickly, you may, cuss it initially, but in the long term, it's great to have because it protects your glass. Okay. The biggest thing that I have experienced, or the most important thing that I've experienced when it comes to rangefinders, is the terrain that you're in is going to set the good from the bad apart very quickly. When you're ranging an animal on a little bit of slope or a little bit of hill, which is most of your cases out west, even when you get into antelope, flat antelope country, there's typically enough terrain. There'll be a little hill behind the antelope, or you'll be up on a little bit of hill and you'll be shooting down at the antelope. Even if it's only a couple degrees, you're going to hit the antelope or some ground very close proximity to the animal, and you're not going to have a huge issue with things like beam divergence as far as getting a correct range. In sagebrush, you might have issues with actually hitting the sagebrush before and after the animal. I have found that most rangefinders, the old Gunworks BR2s, the old SIG ABS 2400. If you put them in the right mode, they typically had a far or a near mode, and if the animal was in the front of a bunch of sagebrush, you would go with the near. If the animal was behind a bunch of sagebrush, you would go with the far, and it'd pick up that animal and it'd have no problem. Where I ran into lots of problems is where it's flat. There could be several instances out west where you would encounter something like this, but the problem I mostly had is in Kansas bean fields. So you may be trying to shoot an animal that's 600, 700, 800 yards across the bean field, and there may be some stubble, there may be some old corn stalks if the farmer's going back and forth between the crops that he's planting in there, and there's often trees behind it. Even on those older rangefinders, even on the modes where you would think it'd be appropriate, like a far or a near, depending on the situation, we still had several instances of getting incorrect ranges, and they were repeatable, but they were wrong, and it would cause misses. It was getting pretty frustrating. The reason why it took us so long to get a review on this is because I wanted to get a couple hunting seasons behind it before I could tell you that that problem's pretty much eliminated. If you get a consistent reading with this, it's going to be accurate. Now you do have to play around, or I should say you may have to play around with those settings. For instance, in a bean field, if you're shooting at a deer and it's say 800 yards to the deer and you're pretty confident that the tree line's another 200 yards behind it, or something like that, you're going to want to use the near, and it's going to not choose the woods behind it, and it is going to pick the deer. Now, if your deer's a little bit closer in relationship to the trees behind it, but there's some stubble, some bean stubble maybe in front of the deer, and you're confident that the beam's not going to hit tree line behind it, you may have to use the near, and then it will give you the range to that deer. We've used it, like I said, for a couple years, and I have found that to be good to go with this rangefinder. And for reference, the SIG 8K has the same quality or the same ability to range the animal correctly in bean fields, whereas the SIG 2400 and the BR2 struggled with that. So to me, that's the biggest thing. I don't hunt a lot here in Kansas. We get one whitetail tag a year, and I don't always have time, or if I have other out-of-state hunts, I may not hunt deer here at all, but I do want that ability, and I also want to know that my rangefinder is as capable as it possibly can be, and this definitely does not disappoint. So that's the number one thing that took me so long to produce this review. I wanted to make sure that I could confidently say that it is capable of doing that. A lot of people want to get into beam divergence. I haven't found it to be very important. I don't know anything about rangefinders and range-finding electronics, but I would assume it's got some kind of algorithm to pick out what part of the beam is actually important when it sends that beam out and it gets reflected back to the unit. And I have found the Revic to be on par with the best, and I would say the other one that would be comparable to would be the SIG 8K. Let's talk about the things that probably separate the two, because I think the rangefinder capabilities are basically the same. Like I said, the 10 power is nice, the glass clarity is nice, especially in low light conditions. It's definitely superior as far as that goes. One thing that is a downfall or a detriment to this Revic is it does not have auto brightness, and what you need to range an animal, let's say 2 or 3 hours before sunset or 2 or 3 hours after sunrise, is going to be too bright for sunrise and sunset. So it's fairly easy to get that mode changed, and when you play with the rangefinder enough that you should be able to get that mode changed quickly. When you're approaching low light conditions, I would probably just go ahead and set it on the lowest value so that it's not an issue. For comparison, the SIG 8K has an auto brightness, which I have not found to be an issue in any conditions. It adjusts appropriately, and it just works. I don't think I would choose rangefinder solely on that, but it is a consideration. The things that are going to set the rangefinder apart is that I think the menu is easier to use, and it does vector wind, which does matter. I don't really want to say a hard stop on the number, but somewhere between 600 and 1,000 yards. When you get past 600 yards, the vector and the wind is going to matter on arrow jump. And if you're trying to get your bullet exactly where you want it, it does matter. A lot of people would argue as long as you can keep it in a 1 MOA or whatever your number is for lethality or ethical long-range kills, then it should be good. But I would argue that every little piece of the puzzle that you can get aligned with where you want your bullet, the better off you're going to be, because you're going to have bad shooting positions or less than ideal shooting positions. You may make a bad shot, and you really need the bullet to go where it's supposed to, so that all those other factors don't just add to a tolerance stack in your accuracy or your precision. So I do think it matters. It's very quick. You just push these buttons right here and then walk through the process of getting the vector, and it just does a clock dial. So you pick where the wind is coming from, and then you get that in there and you get the wind value as far as the wind speed, and then you range and it's good to go. That, in my opinion, is far better than the SIG. The SIG is not hard to use the wind, but the vectoring is better on the Revic. So that is one thing that I think is going to set it apart. I also do see that it is a little bit easier to get a precise and accurate range on the Revic. Now, when the SIG does give you a number, it seems to be true, but this one is easier to get a number. It has an uncanny ability to hit what you want, and I've tested this at known conditions, at known distances out in the bean fields just to verify. It has an uncanny ability to hit something, even though some of the older rangefinders I know were not going to hit that. And I actually had the ability to test this alongside a 2400 for a while, and there's a lot of situations where the 2400 just wouldn't give you a range. So that's another big deal. And I think when you're looking at this rangefinder, the thing that's going to make it separated from the SIG the most is going to be the wind, the ability to get the wind in quickly and accurately and have a vectored wind. So this is going to win in that department. The atmospheric conditions, the sensor on this is external. It acclimates very quickly. You can just swing this on the tether here and it'll give you the atmospheric conditions very quickly, I would say in under 60 seconds. So if you hop out of a truck and you're going to go try to make a real quick stock, it's going to acclimate very well. Or if you pull it out of a pocket that's warm, you just swing it around, it's going to acclimate very quickly. So that's not new or something that, far superior to other rangefinders, but it is something that's worth mentioning. So I think as far as the rangefinder itself, that is the big difference. I am going to go ahead and talk about another big thing to me, and it, once you get the unit and the app set up, it's not a big deal, but when you're walking through a new rifle or new load, it is very important. So the Revic, you can download the Revic app. It's free. It's very quick to get synced in here. It's got a profile manager, so you can go in and you can set up your gun, and then it's got a ballistic calculator, which is the thing that sets it apart. The SIGs don't do that. So when you get a brand new rifle, I don't like to put any data into my rangefinder until I have all the data figured out, all the drops compensated for and all that stuff. When you're doing load development, you may not know where you're going to settle out velocity-wise, and you may not even figure out until after the fact, down the road in your load development, that it didn't like the original bullet that you wanted to use. Your rifle just didn't like it. So you can come in here, you can build your profiles, and then you can get ballistic data right here in the app, and you can verify that it's all correct before you go put it into the unit. Once you've verified that it's correct in this app on your phone, you just sync it to the rangefinder, and then you're good to go. You don't have to do any truing or anything once it's in the rangefinder. On the SIG, you have to put the information into the app, sync it to the rangefinder, and then do all your truing after. Now, you could use a third-party app to do that, but it's just a hassle. It'll give you. It also has a very nice wind feature. You know, the app has a bunch of stuff that's pretty cool. It's got a weather station, and it's got a truing profile section. Some of those things may be usable to some people, and they're great features. But the biggest thing to me is that I can actually use this as a ballistic calculator, just like I would Shooter or the AB mobile app. So it makes the setup of a new rifle a lot quicker. So I think we've talked about everything important and why this is the best standalone rangefinder that you can buy right now. I'm not talking about using things like Kestrel in coordination with rangefinder or using rangefinding binoculars. Those are a little bit different situations, but the best standalone rangefinder that you can buy for long range hunting right now is the Revic BR4. And we're going to go back over the key features to me. 10 power optics, which make it very nice for low light conditions or long distance when you're trying to do some trophy judging. It also has superior optics quality, so the clarity and the brightness are a little bit better, actually quite a bit better than the SIG. I like the wind inputs. It actually allows base wind as well, which I didn't get into. I don't really want to dive into, but you can put in like a 5 mile an hour base wind. So inside of, I would say, 500 or 600 yards, you can use that base wind. So it's already set up. It won't affect arrow jump inside those distances very much, and you can just either double your wind inputs if it's 10 miles an hour, or half it if it's only a 2.5 mile an hour wind, and just dial your windage or hold off in accordance with that. So that base wind feature is actually nice too. I don't use it, but the vectoring and the wind speed inputs are very quick. The range finding capability and the actual ability to hit what you're after is on par with the best. I would say that it's actually a little bit quicker than the SIG to get an accurate and precise range, and therefore ballistic calculation or ballistic solution. But I wouldn't say it's better as far as actual giving you the correct distance, but it is better as far as speed. So as far as the rangefinder itself, those are the key features that I think set it apart. And then you add in the free ballistic app that helps you figure out what your ballistics are going to be for the load that you're using in the particular rifle that you're using. It's far above anything else out there because you can use the app, get it all trued, verified, and then sync it to the unit, and you're good to go. So I know there's really not a lot to talk about as far as rangefinders. In my opinion, it works or it doesn't work for the situation, and this has worked better than any other rangefinder that I have used that I would call commercially available, and definitely better than anyone that actually gives you ballistic solutions, as opposed to getting you a range and then you have to use a third-party app. So we'll have a link in the description below to a thread on the forum where you can head on over, ask me any questions maybe I didn't answer, or we can talk about specifics, and I'll try to answer them as quick as possible. Please like the video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. It definitely helps, especially with the crackdown on social media against gun and gun channels. We really appreciate that. If you're not a member on longrangeonly.com, it's quick, it's free, it's easy to sign up. We'd love to have you. There's lots of great information there, not only from the editors, but from our members, and we would love to have you. Like I said, it's quick, it's free, it's easy. We appreciate you taking the time to watch. Have a great day.